Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff, live right here on Giants.com and the Giants app. I am John Schmeelk, joined by Matthew Citak. The phone number is 201-939-4513. Taking your calls, talking Giants football. We'll be live all week this week at 12:30. Tomorrow will be Madeline and Howard Cross stepping in for Sean O'Hara. Sean will be with me on the Giants Huddle on Thursday instead. Giants Hangout coming on later today. Draft season tomorrow. So busy week coming your way. We're going to have Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus on draft season this week. So a lot of good Giants content coming your way. We did the Cowboy game yesterday, and that game is like 5 games old now. So we're not going to touch on that with Matt. I figure a good thing to do today, kind of day 2 of the mini bye, is talk a little bit about what we think we're looking forward to the most and maybe things we can learn the rest of the year and things that we're excited about watching. Obviously, haven't been many wins, so you got to look for stuff that you can find to learn or get some appreciation for. So we're going to go back and forth. We'll go 1, 2, and we'll kind of go back and forth, and we'll see how far we can get here. Mr. Citak, why don't we lead off with you?
All right. I guess it would be the number one thing I'm looking for these final 5 games of the season is to see, while the start of his season and his career has been very positive and encouraging, I would like to see if Tyrone Tracy can show enough in these final 5 weeks where the Giants have confidence going into 2025 with him as basically the unquestioned RB1. Given Devin Singletary's contract, I think he'll probably be back. So do the Giants have enough confidence in Tracy and Singletary as sort of that 1-2 punch in the running back room where they go into the offseason and don't need to spend any salary cap space or draft picks on the running back position? Because these next 5 weeks are big because, as I'm sure you know, the 2025 NFL draft is supposed to be filled with some very talented running backs. So if this combination doesn't show you enough in the final 5 weeks, maybe you target a running back at some point on, day 2, early day 3 in the draft. So that is one of the biggest things I will be looking for in these final 5 games.
I think that's a good one. I had a Tyrone Tracy one, so I'll kind of put it together with yours. Guys, just let him be the number one back the rest of the way. Give him 17, 18 carries a game. See if he can handle it. Because, look, I think he can. I think he can be running back 1. I think right now he's the best offensive player on the team. Gonna be honest with you. I think right now he's the best offensive player on the Giants that's healthy and playing. So I want to see him get the ball in his hands a lot. Use him as a receiver more. We haven't seen him utilized as part of the passing game enough, in my opinion. I want to see more of that. I want to see if he can handle the workload. Singletary can come in, get his, play his 20% of the, snaps, get his 5 to 7 carries a game. But I want to see Tracy getting 17, 18. And I want to see how he can handle it. So we're in agreement on that. I'll stick on the offensive side of the ball with my first one. Can I see some more big plays from Malik Neighbors? He's been productive. He's getting lots of catches. He's getting lots of targets. He's been vocal about getting all those things. And last game especially, he got them, especially earlier in the game. He's been a very good rookie wide receiver. He's on the verge of setting a bunch of rookie records in terms of receptions and things of that nature. So obviously the production has been there. But here's the thing with Malik Neighbors for me, folks, and this is why I put it this way: more big plays. All right? Over the course of this season, since he came back from his concussion, I believe he only has 2 20-yard catches. So over the course of the year, Pro Football Focus tracks forced missed tackles. Since he came back from that concussion, he has 3 forced missed tackles. Before that, he only had 4. So he has 7 forced missed tackles this year. For a guy that coming out, and we saw earlier in the year, he would catch the ball, make a guy miss, make a big play out of short catch. We haven't seen a lot of those yet. We haven't seen a deep contested catch out of him like we saw early against Dallas that week 4 when he had that great jumping catch over the cornerback. Let's see a couple short catches turn into big gains. Let's see a couple contested catches downfield. Let's see him run past somebody over the top. I just want to see a few more explosive plays out of Malik Neighbors like we saw in the first 4 games and like we saw from him coming out of college from LSU.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And, I mean, if you look at his recent numbers, the receptions have been there, but the yardage is really not. I mean, he hasn't come close to 100 yards, really, since that Cowboys game, I believe.
Yeah, I wonder, I'm going to look it up right now, what his biggest total is since he suffered that concussion. So his total is 71,
yeah.
right? So he's only top 70 yards once, and he has one catch of 20 or more yards.
Yeah,
That's it.
Which, I mean, the yardage alone, like, I guess it's not terrible, but for a guy that you picked number 6 overall, who showed you how explosive he can be in that first month of the season, you'd hope for more than, one game just reaching 70 yards.
And by the way, how about getting the end zone?
Yeah.
0 touchdowns. So I would like to see, when you're in those condensed areas, you need your special players to make special plays to succeed in the red zone, right? Let's see some of that. So again, he's been very productive. Just go down it, right? Since he came back, 4 catches, 7 catches, 9 catches, 6 catches, 6 catches, 8 catches. He has 75 catches for 740 yards. He's on pace for well over 100 catches. He's on pace for well over 1,000 yards for the year. And that's with missing those 2 games in the middle of the year. So really impressive numbers. You like what you see, but just want to see a couple more explosive plays. All right, what's the next one for you?
And the targets have been there too.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
He's had double-digit targets in all but 2 of the games since he came back from the concussion, and even in those 2 games, he had 8 targets and 9 targets. And
Correct.
He's still like towards the top of the leaderboard in terms of several different receiving categories across the NFL. Even with this, somewhat dip in recent production. So, yeah, I would like to see these final 5 games. He doesn't have to go for 100 every single game.
No, of course not.
That would be great. But, show a little bit of what we saw in the beginning of the season would be nice to see, just as a little like momentum carrying into the offseason and going into 2025.
And also, how about no more drops? I'd like that too.
That would be nice.
Okay, what do you got?
My next one, I would say, is not, I guess, too high in terms of like priority, but due to this guy recently being acquired by the Giants and I just really liking him as a prospect coming out of school a couple of years ago, I would love to see if Greg Dulcich can do anything in the Giants offense in these final 5 games. Now, of course, he just got here last week. He just got claimed off waivers. It takes time to learn a new playbook, so I don't expect him to, come in on Sunday, play 80% of the snaps and have 7 or 8 targets. But they have a couple weeks now to sort of integrate him into the system and see what he can do. I mean, Theo Johnson just got placed on IR. He's probably done for the season. There's only 5 games left. So Dulcich is one of 3 tight ends with Daniel Bellinger and Chris Manhertz. Now, Chris Manhertz, we know exactly what he brings to the table. And Daniel Bellinger, while his usage has not been that high this year with Theo Johnson, I feel like we kind of have a sense of what his strengths and weaknesses are as well. Dulcich has just not been able to stay healthy since he came into the NFL. I mean, this is his 3rd year. He's only played 16 games and only 4 this year. But this is a guy that going into the 2022 draft was one of the top tight ends in the country. As a junior, I believe he led the nation in yards per reception with 19.9. And then as a senior, had 725 yards and 5 touchdowns with 42 receptions. From a tight end, those are pretty solid numbers. I mean, Brock Bowers had better numbers, but not many tight ends are, beating those sort of numbers. So
he's long and fast.
Long
and fast.
And he's a good pass-catching tight end. So again, this might be a little bit more of a long shot type of thing, but whether or not he can add anything, because the Giants absorbed his rookie contract. So he's under contract for next year as well, I believe. So can he show you anything? And can you go into 2025 with Theo Johnson and Greg Dulcich as your 2 tight ends? Like, does that, give you confidence? I don't know. We have to see in these final 5 weeks to see, because we feel good about Theo Johnson. He really was starting to come along, especially these last 6 games or so. If Dulcich can show that he can add a little juice to the offense as well, that could be a pretty good tight end combo going into 2025 and potentially even beyond.
Best hair on the team, I think, unequivocally, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, so very quick side note.
Yeah, what do you got?
So I sent the headshot of Greg Dulcich to one of our graphic designers, Cameron, and she photoshops the Giants jersey on. That's what we do until we can actually get the guy in for a headshot. And so she sends it back to me, and I was like, side note, doesn't this guy kind of look like Weird Al? And she literally responds to me, this is our 24-year-old graphic designer, goes, is that a typo? What is Weird Al? I'm like, oh my God. There are not many times where I have felt old.
Oh, you're getting
I'm
there,
only
though.
32.
You're getting there.
And I was like, you don't know who Weird Al is? Now that makes me feel old. Sorry, had to just,
no.
You brought up the hair, and that reminded me of that.
I get it, no question about it. Good flowing locks, though. Very much.
You're like Amish Paradise? You don't know?
Literally what I said. I'm like, how do you not know Amish Paradise?
Oh, man.
I digress.
All right. The last one for me on offense, I guess, if Tommy DeVito gets back, let's see if he can be the backup. I think that's one we can throw out there real quickly. I want to see John Michael Schmitz continue to play a little bit better. He's given up 6 pressures in the last 2 games. He's given up, according to PFF, he got credit for 5 sacks in the last 3 games between the Panthers, the Bucks, and the Cowboys. Look, second-round pick, you want to start seeing progress here, right? You want to see him. And one of the things coming out that I was worried about with him is his play strength, and we still see sometimes the play strength be an issue. He still has Greg Van Roten, and he has Runyon next to him. We know we're going to have issues at tackle, right? Because you have Illuminor and Andrew Thomas out. We know how long Illuminor is going to be out. Maybe he's back this week. We'll have to see. But I want to see that interior of that Giants offensive line, starting with Schmitz, be a little bit more secure in there. And that goes back to being productive in the run game, right? You got 2 backup quarterbacks. You got to be good in the run game. This is not just about pass protection, right? This is about run blocking too. Can you move people? Can you create space for Tyrone Tracy and move the ball down the field? So those would be my last things on offense. If you have any others before you want to hit over to the defensive side of the ball.
No, I guess on a similar note, would like to see Evan Neal step up these last 5 games. I know he struggled this past, was it Thursday against the Cowboys? And that was after 2 games after returning to the starting lineup where he actually looked okay. I mean, that Panthers game, he played well. That was probably his best game in the NFL. And then the Bucks game, I believe he gave up 1 sack.
Yeah, it was the first play of the game. It was the first pass play of the game. Mm-hmm.
But even in that Bucks game, other than that one play, like, he looked okay out there. Looked better than what we have seen from him in the last 2 seasons.
I honestly thought he looked better in the Buck game as a total body of work in terms of pass protection than he looked in the Panther game. I thought his run blocking against Carolina was better. That's how I would put it.
I mean, his run blocking in the Panthers game was great. Like, there's no way anyone can doubt that. You can say what you want about him overall, but as a run blocker in that Panthers game, he was very good. The last 2 games, not as good, and then the pass protection has been the issue, I would say, or was the biggest issue in the Cowboys game. So just on a similar note to Schmitz, I mean, I don't know if what he's done to this point gives the Giants and confidence that they can go into next year with him penciled in as a starter. That, at this point, I would say probably leaning towards no on that, but I don't know. Maybe he steps up in these final 5 games, shows them enough where they are like, let's bring this guy back. Let's give him a chance to compete for one of the starting jobs on the O-line.
Yeah, even if not a tackle, maybe a guard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So just on a similar note to Schmitz, those 2 young guys are probably the most important pieces to the offensive line in these final 5 weeks to see if they can show a little bit of growth heading into the offseason.
All right, defense, I'll go secondary. Can someone get their hand on the football? Like, at this point, I don't even need a pick.
I want to pick.
Well, I want one, but
I want to pick.
We need to start with just touching the football, with knocking the ball away. Cordell Flott's had a couple of those last few weeks, but I was doing some of our film work today, and Pro Football Focus has a forced incompletion stat, and Newbin and Phillips, for example, who I think have had 2 pretty good rookie years. You have to be happy with it. Their problems, what they've shown. Just 1 forced incompletion between the 2 of them all year. So can you get more forced incompletions? And to that point, can we have a really good final 5 games from Deonte Banks? This is a young secondary we knew coming into the year, and we circled it in a big red marker that this could determine how well the Giants are going to play defensively this year. Now, there's been other problems too, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, with what we're going to talk about. But can this young defensive secondary show some more signs of being able to get their hands on the football, knock passes away, to your point, get some interceptions, get some takeaways, because it is a long time coming. There has not been enough of that, and the Giants need to start making more of those plays.
I have I guess somewhat of a trivia question for you.
Yeah, what do you got?
Do you know who leads the Giants this season in pass breakups? Passes defensed.
Okay, Cordell Flott would be too easy of an answer. You wouldn't ask me that if it was Cordell Flott. That would be my guess. My guess would be Cordell Flott.
Brian Burns.
My second guess was going to be a guy that batted balls down at the line of scrimmage.
He has 8 passes defensed, Brian Burns. And number 2 is Deontay Banks with 7, and Cordell Flott is 3 with 6.
6. Okay.
And then there's a little bit of a drop-off. So, yeah. Getting your hands on the football is an important piece of playing in the secondary.
Yes, and because that helps preventing catches. If you don't get your hands on the football, it's hard to prevent catches.
Yes.
And that's kind of important for defensive backs.
That it is. All right, next one.
Yes, what do you got?
I'll take just the edge position, and we'll leave maybe the interior for the next one. But I would like to see Kayvon Thibodeau really step up these last 5 games. I mean, Brian Burns, his stats on the season may not jump off the page, but overall, I think he's been pretty dang good. Pretty consistent.
I think he's been a very good player.
Obviously, you would love the sack total to be higher than 6, but he's getting pressures on the quarterback. He's like among the leaders in quick pressures, getting to the quarterback within 2.5 seconds, according to Next Gen Stats. He's been good. And now, we saw when he was going opposite Azeez Ojulari when Kayvon was on IR, the two of them together with Dexter in the middle, that was like a very formidable pass rush trio. And going into the season, we had all this hype about Dexter, Kayvon, and Burns playing together, forming one of the best pass rushing trios in the league. Well, they haven't quite lived up to that. Dex obviously was great. He's now done for the season, likely. It's Kayvon's time to really step up. I mean, he's been back now, 2 games since his wrist injury. Hasn't made the biggest impact in those 2 games. Just like a couple of tackles. He did have a tackle for loss. 3 quarterback hits, actually. He's actually had a quarterback hit in every game he's played this year. So, but only 2 sacks on the season. I want to see him get, in these last 5 games, get a couple of sacks, but, stack up the pressures on these opposing quarterbacks. Like, he's obviously, Kayvon's going to be one of the starting edge rushers on the 2025 Giants, but it would just be great to see him pick up some of those sack numbers that we saw from him last year. And just, again, that would just give more confidence going into 2025 of that trio of Kayvon, Burns, and then will be hopefully healthy Dexter Lawrence as, that pass rushing threat that we saw lead the NFL in sacks for half the season. I mean, the Giants have had 1 sack in the last 4 games, and it was Burns against his former team, the Panthers, in Munich. Kayvon was only playing for 2 of those, so I can't blame him for that stat overall. But it's time to start getting pressure back on these quarterbacks, because I feel like one of the biggest reasons the Giants defense has kind of struggled recently is because they just haven't been able to get pressure on any of these opposing quarterbacks. And when you give a guy, an NFL quarterback, time in the pocket, he's going to find an open pass receiver or wide receiver eventually. And so let's see Kayvon get some pressure on the quarterback.
Can we find a defensive tackle with Dexter Lawrence out? We don't know about Nacho's injury. We don't know about DJ Davidson's injury. We'll learn about that on Wednesday. If they're going to be out for a long period of time, we're going to see the Elijah Chapmans. We're going to see the Jordan Rileys. We're going to see the Corey Durden's out there that the Giants have brought in. In terms of guys on the practice squad, take a look at some of their bigger guys on the defensive line. They don't really have anyone aside from Casey Rogers or undrafted free agents. So can we find a defensive tackle with more exposure and more snaps that maybe can be part of this roster next year? I think that's what you're looking for here with Dexter out and, again, potentially Davidson and Nacho being hurt too. Can you find a young guy that shows you enough where, I'm not even saying a starter next year, but can he be the 3rd defensive tackle? Can he be the 4th defensive tackle and feel good about it? That's something I'll be keeping an eye on.
All right, my next one, very similar note to that. In these last 5 games, which we haven't heard anything about this guy at all since the end of training camp, but Deontay Johnson has been sitting on injured reserve. Now, I don't know what his health status is. I mean, I feel like when he got put on IR...
Was he designated to return? He was, right?
Yes, he was designated to return. When he got put on IR at the end of training camp, I feel like, the reports were saying that he was only going to miss, a month maybe 2. So I would think that he's near, 100% healthy.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know what happened to him.
He's just been sitting on IR all year, but just given the state of the team right now and the linebacker position just in general, I would like to see him get some playing. First of all, be activated off IR, and then just see what he can do out there. I mean, he's undrafted with his rookie, or is his second year now? Second year.
He was undrafted rookie last year.
Yeah,
correct.
But we still haven't seen him in in a regular season game, and he showed a lot during training camp and during preseason. So much so that everyone was projecting him as one of the linebackers to make the original 53 before he suffered that injury. So I would like to see him, assuming he's healthy, which we don't know for sure. I would like to see him get on the field, see what he can do, see if he can be, even as you were just saying, with potential defensive tackle number 3 or 4, maybe he could be linebacker 3 or 4 on this team next year. Because I would assume Bobby and Micah McFadden will be back, and probably
Micah's last year of his rookie contract, right? It'll be year 4 for him.
Yeah, he was 2022. So those two, I would presume, would be the starting linebackers. But maybe Deontay Johnson can come in, be that third linebacker and a big special team contributor. Sort of waiting in the wings and see if he can grow into eventually being a key part of this defense. I don't know, but we just haven't seen him at all since the preseason. And I mean, you and I both saw him every day during the summer. He looked great out there. I would love to see if he can, add anything to this defense the last 5 games and potentially 2025.
All right, last one for me. Just end the bingo card game where every week you have the same issues that lose you football games. Show the ability to fix your problems, right? And don't have the same problems every week. I'd much rather be at the point where, new things popping up every week, and we fix one thing, then the other thing pops up. I'd feel better about that than just every week you can't stop the run, right? Stop the run. Even if it means giving up a few deep balls one week, I just want to see the ability to stop the run consistently. If you have to bring up a safety, fine. Just stop the run. We've been looking at this for 2.5 years now about not stopping the run, Matt. We got to stop the run. Stop the run. And then, can you just win the turnover battle once? I mean, we're at 12 straight games now. Got to win the turnover battle at least once this year. I'm tired of the game of bingo. Just tackle better with the run defense. Just finally fix some of those issues that have been plaguing you all year. And that's all I got.
I'm with you. I mean, just in terms of Sunday's game against the Saints, I would rather see the Giants, I'm not going to say shut down Alvin Kamara, but do at least a decent job of limiting him.
Saints have no receivers. Make them beat you through the air,
I was going to say, even if that means you get burned by, a long Marquez Valdez-Scantling 50-yard catch, I can live with that if you can show a improved effort at slowing down Kamara and the run game. So I'm with you on that one.
You all done?
Yeah, I think those are the big ones.
I'm with you. Sorry for starting a little bit late today, folks. That was my bad. I'll take the hit on that one. Giants Huddle Podcast, the Papa's Perspective with Troy Aikman is up on podcast platforms, YouTube, all those areas we put the Giants Huddles on. We'll have Sean O'Hara later in the week, and then we'll have our regular preview on Friday, draft season, and Giants Hangout will be coming up next couple of days. Hangout later on this afternoon, draft season tomorrow. Trevor Sikkema joins Tony Pauline and I. Just go to Giants.com/podcast, Giants app, or just search for Giants Huddle Podcast or Giants Podcast Network. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform. 201-939-4513. Tony in Atlantic City. He'll lead us off today. Hey, Tone.
How you doing, guys?
What's up?
Hey.
Well, I'm glad you have the show about this particular subject because I have something that I would like to see.
Sure.
The rest of this season, I'd like to see Bryce Ford Wheaton start playing some. He's a big, fast, tall, has all the measurables, wide receiver. I know he's had some injury issues this season, but if he's healthy, and I know Brian Dable still wants to win games, but I mean at least if you have him participating in real games, not just training camp and preseason, going into next year, at least you would know what you have, given the fact you may lose Slayton and who knows what else. So I think that I'd like to see him play at least some in these last 5 games.
Who would you like him? And I think it's a fair point, Tony. I think it's an interesting request. We even talked a lot about Bryce Ford Wheaton, so I like the call. Who would you like him to take snaps away from?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know Hyatt isn't playing that much. Robinson has had a so-so year. I don't really want to take any snaps away from those receivers necessarily.
Well, so there's
But I
one
just wanna
left.
see maybe
So that means there's one left. There's one guy you didn't mention. That's the only guy that's
Well-
left.
Neighbors, obviously not.
Right. But the other one, Slayton. That's the one guy you did not mention.
Yes, yes. Well, I don't know. I mean, that would be a tough decision for me, but maybe they could at least spot him, give him some snaps just to see what he can do. I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs. I know Dable wants to win the games, but I just think it would be something that at least you know next year what you have. I mean, if they lose Slayton, I mean, they're going to need some receivers, and I think if he can do something, if he's someone they can count on, a big, fast wide receiver, that would also affect what they might have to do in the draft next year.
No, Tony, good call. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to try to get Bryce Ford Wheaton some snaps, he's done a good job on special teams. Reward him for the work he's done as a gunner. I would have no problem with that.
Me neither. But honestly, on a similar note, if we're going to talk about receivers that could potentially see more playing time in the final stretch, I think it's more beneficial to see what Jalen Hyatt can do.
Agreed.
Coming out of the bye, he has played 25 snaps against Tampa, didn't record a reception, and 18 snaps against the Cowboys, had 2 catches for 8 yards. But in that Panthers game before the bye, 4 catches for 39 yards. Now, I know that,
including 2 on the game-tying drive.
yeah, now, obviously, 4 for 39, that's not going to, jump off the page, but
Well, compared to what he's done the rest of the year, it does.
he literally has 3 receptions otherwise for the season. So that was clearly his, best game of the season. And honestly, after that game, I thought maybe, we would see Hyatt a little bit more, maybe Slayton a little bit less, but that hasn't really happened. Slayton has still, been on the field, I believe, his normal number of snaps the last 2 weeks. But if there's a receiver that I think the Giants would stand to benefit from playing a little more to see what he could do, well, I like Bryce Ford Wheaton, but I feel like in terms of offensive snaps, it's got to be Jalen Hyatt in that sense.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think you try to work him in. The one thing watching Hyatt the last couple of weeks, and we talked about this too when he was coming out, Matt, in terms of why he probably dropped like he did in the draft, just the play strength. You can really see him easily get knocked off his routes, and when he's like fighting for balls down the field, guys can really bother him, and they slow him down with some of the hand fighting stuff. And look, you could practice that, but a lot of that is just weighing 175 pounds. So I think there's got to be ways to try to free him up, get him down the field, get him off a press and things like that. And if they can figure that out, I think that will go a long way towards, getting him a little bit more productive as a receiver.
I agree. The one thing I will say about Bryce Ford Wheaton is, so this is his second season. Last year, as an undrafted free agent, he showed a lot in that training camp, and I think there was the one preseason game before he tore his ACL.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that, there was a lot of buzz that he was potentially going to make the original 53.
He might have been on my first 53. I got to remember.
He was definitely
He was on the Tino's.
on the bubble, like potentially going to be there, and then he tore his ACL, so that put that to bed. But yeah, I mean, I feel like he's now obviously over a full calendar year removed from that injury. As you get further and further removed from it, just a torn ACL in general, you start to return more and more like to what your pre-injury self was. So yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. It'd be great to see if he can add much to the receiving group, because he's very good on special teams. He's a great gunner. But I do kind of agree. I wouldn't mind giving him some playing time on offense, see what he can do. I mean, I feel like evaluating the roster these final 5 games and who is going to potentially play a role in 2025, it's got to be one of the biggest priorities. Obviously, you're still trying to win games. You're not going to make roster changes that will make your team, significantly worse, but, getting some young guys, even if it's just a handful of snaps a game, I feel like could be beneficial.
Let's go to James in California. He's up next. Hi, James.
Hi, guys. I told Pearson I needed some psychology help getting closure on the Daniel Jones chapter.
Well, James, here's the problem. If people that need psychological help, I like to have Datino on the show because he can relate to a lot of those problems, but we will do our best.
Thanks, man. Schmeelk, I think you said this last week, but I'm with you. Like, coming into this season, I know there's a lot of doubters out there and a lot of people saying, Jones was terrible, but I like really, really felt like he was going to have just not only a good season, but a great season. And yeah, like better than the 22 season. I felt like it was all lined up, third year of the Dable regime. And I'm still trying to figure out like what the heck happened. And it feels like almost like a bad breakup where you don't quite know what happened.
So you're looking for why Jones struggled? Is that what you're looking for, James?
Basically, yeah. And I don't want to put it obviously totally on Dable, and I know there's a lot of factors that go into this, but I'm even going back to the beginning, and it just seems like maybe the coaching, I don't know, like they like almost like coached his best qualities out of him by accident.
James, I think you hit on something, and hang with us. And I kind of talked about this last week. I don't want to go through the full Jones career arc, but I will give you some of the ideas that I've workshopped as to why it didn't work out here. And part of that is kind of what you just mentioned, right? Where he comes out in that first year, he's throwing the ball all over the place. Now, his stats were inflated that year. He had 2 or 3 of his best games against literally 2 or 3 of the worst teams in football that year. That inflated some of the numbers. But the fearlessness in which he threw the ball down the field, which turned into a lot of turnovers, right? And I think there was such a focus on limiting the turnovers, it took away some of his psychological aggressiveness, right? Where he was not willing enough to make a mistake down the field. Which, by the way, when you're trying to solve that problem, you go too far the other way, I can live with that. But then eventually, you got to let go a little bit. And I don't think he was ever able to let go and become that aggressive player down the field again, where he was willing to say, I'm going to throw this. And again, you don't want to be reckless, but just be aggressive to the point where you're not, if you're worried about anything you do, if you're worried about making a mistake, you're not going to do it well. And I think there was some of that there. I don't think that was Dable, by the way. I think that goes back to, Joe Judge even when he was here. I'm not putting that on Dable. That goes back
his
to when
numbers
Joe Judge was here.
from 2019 to 2020 dropped significantly. His passing numbers.
And then the
2021.
And then the aggressives never came back. Then last year, I think he got really messed up by the beating he took and the way the offensive line fell apart in front of him. I think that messed with his head, and then it messed with his body with his torn ACL, and come back from that. And then this year, I think a lot of the issues were ball placement and accuracy, which frankly has not been that big of an issue, prior to this year. And we saw it in camp. Like the first couple of weeks, he was all over the place, uncharacteristically all over the place. He got a little bit better, started the year a little bit better, but the deep ball accuracy never came back. That even some of the short and intermediate accuracy wasn't what you needed it to be. And, you combine that, again, trying not to make a lot of mistakes, then I think he's second-guessing himself. You kind of put all that together, and James, again, I don't know that any of this is true, and it just didn't work out. And he was never a guy that, even going back in his early years and going back to Duke, where he would throw something before he saw it. You know what I mean? That's the superpower of your special quarterbacks, right? And there are good quarterbacks in the NFL that have to see it and then they throw it. And that's okay. You can live with that if the other stuff is really good and you only what a good runner he is and all that stuff. But the superpower of the great ones is that you can see a second and a half ahead of what's happening on the field. And I don't think that necessarily developed with him either. So I think, again, he worked his butt off. Great guy. Love him to death. I wish him all the best. I hope he figures that out. I hope he has a really good career. But if I was to try to put everything together into a pile as to the issues, as to why eventually it did not work out for him, and again, I mentioned last year with the sacks, I think just the beating it took over his career here, where I think his internal clock it was never great, even going back to Duke, where his pocket presence and stuff like that, it was never the best. But I think with all the pressure and the sacks he took, I think that messed up that part of his game too, where he's looking down at the rush instead of looking up because he was getting hit so much. And Matt, you can add whatever you think. I know it was a long answer. I apologize, James, but I think that's all the stuff together that led to his downfall and his inability to succeed as Giants quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it on the head. I was literally just going to point to his drop in production from his rookie year to the next 2 years, where going into that 2020 campaign, the coaching staff at the time directly said that limiting Daniel's turnovers was going to be one of their biggest emphasis on offense. And
Understandably, by the way.
for sure, because he had, as a rookie, obviously way too many turnovers.
Fumbles
Interceptions and
picks.
fumbles.
Yes,
exactly.
correct.
And, while those turnover numbers got a lot better, it clearly affected his passing numbers, which suffered significantly. And I'm with you. I think he got so in his own head about trying to not turn the ball over that he lost that sort of somewhat gunslinging mentality that we saw as a rookie.
It's
and
like-
that gave us so much, promise in that 2019 season.
The Danny Dimes persona got put away. And it never, and again, I don't think that was a real thing with him. I'm just using it as in terms of what fans were calling him, but it never came back out again.
Yeah.
You just didn't see that guy playing. He never seemed like he was playing loose. You know what I mean? You watch some players like Patrick Mahomes, you always look so loose with the way he played. DJ never looked like he was playing loose after that first year. I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
No. I mean, I appreciate that explanation. It's great because even that rookie year, right? He only had 12 interceptions. Now I know he had a ton of fumbles. I don't know how many fumbles, but there was a ton of fumbles.
You remember those 12? How many starts did he have that year?
12?
Yeah, so he had to pick a game.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. But it wasn't like, I don't know. I mean, even Eli had years where he was at 20 interceptions.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Different game then, but yes.
Yeah, it's just kind of tragic because, again, I'm not looking to put blame on Joe Judge or any of these coaches, but it's kind of like, hey, see the kid's qualities and kind of nurture them. And yes, you got to rein them back a little bit, but I don't know, let them go. And I think John, you just made a great point with he never really played free, and I think he could have,
Yeah, and I think we even said this in the offseason, right? And I think we had this conversation on the show, where if he throws 5 extra picks, but you get 15 more explosive plays out of it, where do I sign? I was okay with that, with a few more mistakes if it meant a little bit more aggression. I was fine with that this year, and you know what? And then when he did take the shots, he wasn't able to complete them, and that was the weird ball location and placement stuff. Maybe that was ACL related. He never got back into a rhythm after tearing the ACL. Some guys recover differently. Things come back faster for other people. It affects one quarterback differently than another. Whatever the reason for that, this year, the deep ball placement, if that was just average the first 5 or 6 games, the Giants could have won 2 or 3 more games.
Yeah, and while this doesn't help the Giants at all moving forward, but just in terms of Daniel Jones' own career, I don't think there's a much better location where he could have landed than in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. I mean, we leading into that season opener, you and I both raved about Kevin O'Connell as a head coach, and we're clearly seeing it. The Vikings, who were supposed to be in a down year, are 10-2, one of the best teams in the NFL, at least record-wise. And so, I think if there's any coach that can help get Daniel Jones' career back on track, it is Kevin O'Connell in that offense with the playmakers they have around him. Obviously he's not going to Minnesota to be the starting quarterback. Even if Sam Darnold leaves in free agency and Daniel Jones re-signs, it's likely to be the backup to J.J. McCarthy, who they just took, 10th overall this year. But as we've seen, injuries happen, and he could find his way back onto the field at some point. And if it's with the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell, I think we might see a little bit more of that, the rookie year Daniel Jones, than what we have seen in the last couple of years.
And by the way, Daniel, if you talk to him about this, he would never probably agree with any of the stuff that we just said.
Oh, he would put it all on himself.
Correct.
That's the type of person he is.
Right. And I just don't think that's the way he thinks about it and would think about it himself and how he analyzes his own play. But that's from 2 people that have been here. Were you here for his first rookie year too?
That was my first year,
right?
His rookie
As
year.
2 people that have been here and watched him take every single snap in games and in practice like we have, every snap that Daniel Jones has taken playing football, aside from regular season practices, I've seen him take that snap. That's just my impression. And look, guys, I don't know if he has it in him to ever be like a top 5 quarterback. Even after the 2022 season, we did our quarterback rankings. I think we had him like 13th, but that wasn't counting older players like Rodgers and Stafford, because it was like based on who would be you'd rather have in the next 5 years. So we took out a lot of the guys coming off of injuries. Like Kyler Murray, I think, was coming off his ACL that year, if I recall correctly, right off of his 2022 year.
Yeah.
So there were 3 or 4 or 5 guys that wasn't included in that because of age or injury, and we had him like 13th or something like that coming off that 2022 year. But that I believe that if he gets with the right coach and the right program, he can be the 15th, 16th best starting quarterback in the league if he gets in the perfect spot.
Kind of like what we're seeing from Sam Darnold this year.
Yeah, and I do think, though, I will say this. I think Darnold has a lot more volatility than Daniel does. I think Daniel will be a more consistently guy in the middle, while Darnold will have some games where he might play so well, he's going to throw like 6 absolute bullets in the middle of the field in the coverage that'll beat the best defense in the league. The next week, when you play the 25th best defense, he might just throw it to the other team 3 times and you'll lose. So I think Darnold has more standard deviation from his mean, but I think Daniel is probably steadier to the mean. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
Because Darnold makes some throws, man.
He does.
That's why I fell in love with the draft. Like back then, I wasn't watching every snap like I am now, and you watch a lot of the big time throws, and you're like, oh man, if this guy could put it together, he's gonna be an absolute beast.
Yeah, the issue is after he makes one of those throws that kind of makes your jaw drop, the next throw will make you roll your eyes and be like, oh, there he is. Like, there's the Sam Darnold we saw with the Jets.
Right, and coming out, it's funny. See, this is, you go back and you think about how you evaluate the quarterbacks, right? And you try to figure out, all right, well, this is what I did well. This is what I didn't do well. And with Darnold, remember, he played linebacker in high school. He did not have a lot of quarterbacking experience. So coming out, and I believe he was just a 2-year starter at USC. I don't think he was a 3-year starter there.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So I thought, all right, he has a lot of these things on tape where he makes some mistakes, he makes some dumb throws, his decision-making, you worry about it. But he was so young, he didn't play quarterback that much. I think he can figure it out. And, well, maybe he has, but it took him like 6 years in a lot of ways, right? So that's why experience in college matters, getting a lot of snaps. Look at Bo Nix, how he's done. Now, he had a couple big plays last night that really upped his stats. He still only completed like 50% of his passes, but played well. And if you look at, and it's funny, I was looking at this the other day with Bo Nix, with the way people are losing their minds about how he's played. And to his credit, he's played a lot better than I thought he was. And I thought last night he actually flashed a better arm than what I saw when I studied his college tape.
That Marvin Mims deep touchdown, that was beautiful.
The one over the middle, just a
beautiful
bullet. Unbelievable.
93.
Throw.
Oh, great. It was like 50 air yards, but ended up going for a 93-yard.
Correct.
touchdown.
So I was looking at his great streak of games, right, when he really turned it on. Well, 284 yards against the Panthers, 223 yards against the Ravens, one of the worst defenses in the league this year. The Chiefs, he threw for 215 yards. Well, good job, but not super explosive. Then against the Falcons, whose defense is terrible, 307 yards. Then against the Raiders, whose defense is terrible, 273 yards. So I was really curious to see. Again, the Browns are not the defense they were last year. They're probably middle ground
but
defense.
They still got some good pieces.
But they got some pieces. So I thought last night for me was like, all right, how does he do against a bit of a jump up in class on defense? And I got to say, and again, only 18 to 35, and he had a 93-yard pass in there that inflated the passing numbers. But 294 yards. He did throw 2 picks. But nice job by Bo Nix last night.
Yeah, I mean, again, as we said right after the draft, he landed in like the perfect system for him.
Yep.
I mean, Sean Payton's system is just made for guys like Bo Nix, and I think that's why we've seen him really take a step in this second half of the season.
And I feel like Sean Payton, he does not get enough credit. You know, everyone talks about these other gurus and stuff. Heading into this year, I mean, the Broncos, in terms of their cap with the Russell Wilson contract and all that stuff, there were few organizations that were in a rougher spot than they were in terms of long-term, how are they going to build this thing? They don't have a quarterback. They have all this dead money because of Russell Wilson. Javonte Williams, who was a big running back for them, tore his ACL, and it wasn't that. It was multiple ligaments, if I'm not mistaken. You know, they had to let go of Tim Patrick. They traded Jerry Jeudy because of salary cap considerations. Von Miller left. just go down the list, right? They lost their big-time safety. I'm sure who's their safety there that was a really good player that ended up leaving because of cap considerations. Justin Simmons left, thank you. You're like, wow, man, this is going to be a real struggle for them, right? They're going to be in the playoffs.
They're 8-5 with one of the best defenses in the NFL.
And a rookie quarterback, and their offensive line's playing well.
Yep.
Great job.
Did they take
Sean Payton?
the entire Russell Wilson cap hit this year?
I believe they. That's a
that was,
good question.
Wasn't that like $80 million or something?
I don't know the answer to that. Why don't you look that up while I go to the next call? 201-939-4513. Let's go to Scott in New Mexico. He's up next. Hi, Scott.
Hi, guys. How you doing today?
Good.
John, I wholeheartedly agree with you about stopping the run. It's one of my biggest qualms about the Giants because I think you win football games if you can do it. Last year, the Giants, I think, were giving up about 133 yards per game. This year, with better personnel, they're giving up about 146 yards. So there's a big differential with better personnel.
Now, I guess better personnel. You say because of Burns.
All of the guys. Dexter Lawrence was playing better before he got hurt.
Oh, I mean, look, Dexter Lawrence is Dexter Lawrence. Just remember though, last year they did have Leonard Williams for half the year.
Yep.
They did not have Leonard Williams for half the year this year. So that is a big difference. Leonard Williams, as we saw yesterday,
and A'Shawn Robinson.
For that matter. You're right. So 2 fewer defensive tackles. Great point on A'Shawn. And they can still play. I mean, did you just watch Leonard Williams single-handedly beat the Jets on Sunday? Great for him.
Right.
Thrilled for Leonard. But, geez.
And also this season, Kayvon missed 5 games. And, as great of a pass rusher as Aziz is, I don't think anyone would argue that Kayvon's better against the run than Aziz.
Absolutely. Aziz is not. In fact, there was a great article, and that's what I wanted to read a small snippet of it.
Yeah, go ahead.
By Mike Lee, who's a feature writer for Sports Illustrated. It appeared on the 28th. It's really outlines how bad the Giants are and what the reasons were. It's very well defended, so I suggest if you have a chance, read it. But I'm going to read a small passage and get your comments. It starts this way. The Giants' run defense has been shoddy all season long with players out of position or missing tackles, and we saw both of those against Dallas. The Giants' discomfort in zone coverage could contribute to their issues with run-fit integrity. They seem to bite hard on misdirection and motion, which pulls them out of position rather than remaining disciplined and passing off players who move through their zones. The word I'm going to hone on in is discipline, because I think it contributes to the number of missed tackles that the Giants have. I think they have about 85 or 86 missed tackles. I may be wrong in that figure. I'm not quite sure, and probably that's 4th or 5th in the league. But that little passage right there, to me, indicates that they don't have the discipline or they don't have the right players to use that discipline to stop the run. I was wondering what your comments would be. Did the Giants overvalue some of their players in this particular kind of defense that Shane Bowen created? Because we all know Shane Bowen was brought in here to stop the run, and so far that hasn't materialized. So I'm wondering, based on the comment I just read to you from Mike Lee, if that's a contributory factor, that they just don't have the discipline to hold where they need to be as players go in and out of the zones that they're in. I was curious what your comments would be on that.
What do you think, Matt?
You take this one.
It's a good question. I can't speak to the discipline in the zone coverage and the motion and stuff like that. I don't have a great answer for that one. I think it's a good observation. It's something that I'll now watch the rest of the year on plays where teams do the jet sweep motion and the motion heading into the snap. I do think that's interesting. I want to think about that a little bit more.
Okay.
But look, missed tackles to me are still the bigger issue, but gap discipline is part 2 of that. And if you want to call that part of discipline, I don't disagree. Guys have to be in the right spots, and if you're not, you're going to have open areas to run the football. So that's part of it. I don't know how much of that is part of the zone stuff. Again, I'll have to keep an eye on that with the motion stuff. But gap discipline, along with missed tackles, those would be the 2 things in the run game that I think are the 2 biggest issues.
Right. And one last comment. As far as Malik Neighbors, he's averaging about 10 yards a catch. He's averaging a first down. I understand your philosophy about trying to get the ball down the field, but I said very early in the season that no team is going to allow him, based on his ability at LSU, was going to allow him to get deep that often. And so far that seems to be the case. So I don't blame Malik Neighbors. It might be the way the Giants' offense has been running. But if you throw the ball, and I think he's caught 75
75
right now, out of 116 targets. So he's doing fairly well. And so if you're averaging 10 yards a catch, that's a first down. So while I'd like to see him, take it all the way, I thought teams would be geared not to have him do that.
No, Scott, that's fair in terms of winning over the top. That's fair, but you are allowed to catch a short pass and make a couple guys miss.
Sure. Well, that's something that the players have to have instinctively to be able to do what he did at LSU, but we haven't seen that obviously so far. So there's got to be a reason why that's not happening. But anyways, I think the Giants, no matter what happens in the season, I'm not going to lambast them. They are what they are. They have the worst record in football, and it's tough as a Giants fan to watch it each week and watch the mistakes repeatedly going off at the same time every single week. And that's the only thing I have against Brian Daboll. Not that he's a good or a bad coach. I don't know that yet. As a head coach. It's just the same excuses are given almost every week, and that I have a little problem with.
Well, I don't think Scott, would you consider them excuses, though, or would you consider them reasons? I don't think he's made excuses, right?
It seems like excuses. You might be right. It might be reasons, but when you hear it as a person listening to it, you might as well put it on a loop and run it every week because it's the same speech almost every single week. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just go back and listen to it.
Oh, Scott, I listen to the postgame every week.
I'm sure you do.
And Scott, appreciate the call. The problem is going back to what we said when we were talking about things to look for the rest of the year. When you have the same issues every week, you're going to have the same coaches do the same thing after every game. If you have to make the same mistakes every week, that's a problem.
For sure.
Can't blame Brian Daboll. Yeah, you can't turn the ball over. You got to stop the run. You got to tackle better. You need more big plays. Well, when that's the problem every week, that's what the coach is going to say. Those are all critical factors that lead to wins and losses.
100%.
So PFF, I just looked it up team-wise. There are 5 teams that have more missed tackles than the Giants this year. The Cardinals, the Browns, the Colts, the Rams, and the Dolphins. Giants are at 124. Again, this is PFF tracking it. Just do an idea. The Giants have 124. The team with the fewest missed tackles are the Steelers. Big shock with Mike Tomlin
surprise.
at 81. If you want to go to the middle of the league, who's like the 16th ranked team? That's the 49ers. They have 116. So the Giants only with 8 more than the team in the middle of the league. So the run number's not brutal, but there is a pretty sharp drop in there. So you get to the middle of the league, they're at 116, and then you drop all the way down to like the top 10 team, and you're all the way down to like 97. Yeah. So that's where you get the big drop. Like the Bills are 10th, and they have 97 missed tackles. The Niners are 16th. They have 116. So you get a pretty sizable drop from those middling teams to the really good teams. And out of curiosity, I have not looked at this before, so I'm doing this live. So if this doesn't make sense, maybe I'll end up being wrong. Oh, no, it goes pretty well. So here are the teams with the fewest missed tackles this year in the top 10. Bills, Packers, Vikings, Eagles, all playoff teams. Bears and Titans, no. Chiefs, Lions, yes. The Patriots, some of that Bill Belichick DNA must still be left on that defense, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Pittsburgh Steelers. So 7 of those 10 teams in terms of fewest missed tackles. And the Ravens are 11th, by the way. The Commanders are 12th. So you're looking at 9 of the top 12 teams in terms of missed tackles, all going to be playoff teams. So that should not be a surprise.
Not a surprise at all. I looked up the Russell Wilson cap hits. Broncos have a $53 million dead cap hit this year for Russell Wilson and $32 million dead cap hit in 2025
and
for Russell Wilson.
Then they're done, correct?
And then they're done. So $53 million of their salary cap, which is what?
Amazing.
A sixth? Almost?
Fifth, right? Isn't the salary cap 250?
Is it exactly 250?
I think it's like 253 or 254, something like that.
A very significant portion of their salary cap is going towards Russell Wilson's dead cap hit. And yet they are 8-5 in a playoff team right now.
255.4 is the salary cap.
Just under. Oh yeah, around a fifth. Yeah.
So I mean, that's crazy.
So just saying, in terms of next year for the Giants, who will have a much smaller dead cap hit with the quarterback that they released compared to the Russell Wilson one.
Less than 10%.
It's what, 22 million?
21 or
21.
Yeah, some one or the other.
And the potential to possibly add a rookie quarterback early in the first round. Who knows?
That's the thing. And the Giants, once you get that money back off for Daniel's contract next year, which I don't know, that should be calculated in here now, right? Because he was already released. So the Giants, they right now over the cap has him at $60 million next year. Does that sound right?
Yeah, because it was somewhere in like the low 40s,
right?
Then they released Daniel. I mean, made a couple other moves. I don't know how much move cap space like the Greg Dulcich,
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either.
But could result in the slight change in
right, and they're assuming a
space.
$272 million cap. So they're assuming a $17 million jump, which would be, doing math in my head, around the 12 to 13% jump, if I'm doing the math in my head correctly. So that's not bad. It could be 15%. But look, to your point, when you're not paying your quarterback, even though the Giants have these other guys on their long-term deals that are big money contracts, you can go spend. You're not spending on the quarterback position. Now, we'll see if they end up bringing up a veteran bridge quarterback. If he ends up making a decent amount of money, that remains to be seen. But if you're not paying your quarterback that, premium $40 to $60 million range, which is probably now more than half the teams in the league probably are in that area, right? You have free reign to go and spend in other spots to shore up your roster. Make the conditions, and again, this might drive Giant fans nuts, and we can't get into it running out of time, but this whole offseason, and I said it last offseason too, you need to make that situation around your quarterback, whoever that next rookie or young quarterback that's going to be a franchise guy, make the situation around that player as good as possible. Look what the Broncos did for Bo Nix, right? Really good offensive line, good running game, Cortland Sutton, good receiver, Mims, Franklin, Vele, is that how you pronounce the last name?
I think Vele.
Yeah, do that, right?
Yeah.
Figure out a way to put the best situation around that quarterback. And if that means your defense has to, maybe not be the best for a couple years to make sure you have the right infrastructure around the quarterback, that's what you do. Because you cannot have another repeat of how you handled Daniel Jones in his first 3 years.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think they are on the defense. There already are some talented pieces there that will be part of this team at the very least for 2025.
And they invested a lot of young draft picks in the secondary already. So,
yeah. So I'm with you. Of
course, it's a really good defensive draft. So, you have to balance those.
But we'll see if the Giants go quarterback with their first pick. It'll, at this rate, be towards the top of the first round. Obviously, a lot can change between now and the end of April. But I'm with you. If they do decide to take one of those quarterbacks at the top of the first round, build that offense around him. And put him in the best possible circumstances around him. Now, it doesn't always work out. Like, everyone said that Caleb Williams this year with the Bears was going into the greatest possible situation a rookie quarterback has ever stepped into, and yet the Bears are 4-8.
And the offensive coordinator got fired. The head coach got fired.
Yeah, and while Caleb has shown some flashes, I would say the Bears would probably have hoped that his rookie year would have gone a little bit different than how it's been so far.
The offensive line didn't work out as well as they thought it would over there.
Yeah,
that's been the
you try to put your young quarterback in the best situation possible. Obviously, it doesn't always work out, but all you can do is put your best effort into to put the situations, the circumstances around that young quarterback in the best possible situation.
And look at what the Bears did, right? If you don't believe in that quarterback and you're not sure about him with the first overall pick, and if a team, and they might not be this year, folks, because with the draft class, if another team wants to give you a ransom to move up and take that quarterback there, not going to wait until the next year. Bears happy that they have Caleb Williams instead of Bryce Young. I bet you they are. Yeah. So you can wait. It might be painful to wait through another year. Trust me, I know. But if that's what you got to do, pick a quarterback in round 3. Pick Carson Beck. Pick, whatever. Give him a year, see what he looks like. Then pick another one. Unless you can't pick a quarterback in day 2 and day 1. You made this point with the Cardinals, right? Doing Rosen to Murray. So you can do it.
Yep.
Just figure out a way to get it right. For Matthew Citak, I'm John Schmeelk. That's Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Madeline and Cross tomorrow at 12:30. We'll see you then.